What a vibe.
Yeehaw! Cowboys, cowgirls, and cow them and theys. Welcome to another show. Today is going to be a writer's chat, and today, as I feel like with 90% of my writer's chats, I'm joined by one of my French frogs, favorite French frogs, Malin. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello,
How you doing?
hello. I'm excited to get into this one because it was short and sweet, as Sabrina Carpenter would say.
Short
So
and sweet, deluxe.
enjoy that.
And if you're wondering what we're talking about today, it is, as the title says, going to be Write Your Novel from the Middle by James Scott Bell. Short and sweet indeed. This
I
could have been an email. That's my
I'm so
first review.
shocked. I was going to say I'm so shocked you got the physical format because I was like, this is not necessary for 78 pages.
I know, but I was just like, I like owning things
You
because
know,
I'm a
support
millennial.
support your local artists.
I'm
AKA
not sure if James Scott Bell counts as a local artist for me or you.
no, and also most of that money is going to Amazon anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, but I do like to get the physical copies of the books. It just makes it easier for me to annotate because I do like to not annotate, but I do take notes, and that's kind of a
Yeah.
struggle if I'm reading on my phone. But yet, this is the book we're talking about today. As you can see, it is very skinny, and as Malin says, stick to the ebook. Don't get a physical copy. That's my first review. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about it, the structure. We're going to do, I think, two bulks of chatting for this one. We're going to talk about the first half first, which is like kind of just setting up the book, I guess. So talk a little bit about structure and plotter versus pantser and overall like what he had to say about that. And then we're going to take a little sprinteruno, and then we're going to talk about the actual not chunky, the actual skinny licious menu of this book, which is talking about how to write your book from the middle. And I have thoughts. I don't know. Do you have thoughts?
I I feel like I have more notes than thoughts.
More notes than thoughts.
You
Sure.
know?
I think that'll be a beautiful, beautiful little log line for this review. More notes
Yeah.
than thoughts.
I I I
First of
do
all,
think
just oop,
it's probably one that is going to be easy to adapt and like try, but I have not actually tried it. So it feels a bit like I can't confirm my thoughts on it until I've tested the method, if that makes sense. So yeah.
that does make sense. That does make sense. We're going to say hello to some friends first before we go into the actual craft chat, I guess. First of all, hello, Phoebe, blast from the past. Delighted to
Baby,
have you.
how
Oh
are
my God,
you?
Loco, where you been?
Have you noticed that we've taken over your time slots? So Stig is
Me and
doing
Marlon is
Tuesdays,
like, how
I do
many
Thursdays.
authors, writers does it take to do a Phoebe? And it's two. The answer is two.
Yeah.
Uh, you do the work of two writers.
Yeah.
But yeah, hello, Phoebe, welcome. Wallace is here. Hello, hello. Wendy is also here with the yeehaw. Appreciate that one. Never read this one. Well, get ready to be learned, I guess. Anna is here. Wallace, any chance you're in Dallas today? Oh my God, no, I'm not. Are you? And they are for a work trip. I had to check in with Mrs. Worldwide. Mrs.
The worldwide also makes me laugh because I was in London, like in central London on I think it was Friday, and my friend like came over to me and after like she was like, I just traveled on the Jubilee line and oh my god, I don't know what the fuck is going on. There's so many people in bald caps and like sunglasses and suits. I was like, it's Pitbull. Pitbull's concert is tonight. And everyone's
It's
dressed
the
up as him.
uniform.
It's Mr. Worldwide.
Yeah. Two ships in the night. I'm sorry for you. Also joined by Regina. Hello, hello, friends. Hello, hello, Regina. Welcome. Wendy says, right. I do think they get paid more for ebooks, but of course you don't really own them. I think
Own
this is
them.
supposed to say own, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't really own them. And I do like to have like a physical library of my craft books,
Yeah.
which I think is due for a purge soon because I'm not loving every one of them. So
Are
why
you
do I keep
gonna
them?
oh, you should do I was gonna say you should make some content out of that, you know? Just tier rank them and then get rid of the bottom tier.
I don't think I'd tell people which one I get rid of because that's kind of like, I don't know, shitting on people's work. I mean, I am sort of. It's not for me, but it can be for someone else. I will tier rank all the books I've read at some point, I think.
I feel like
Uh,
that's the same though. If you tier rank them, it's like
no, because there's like, well, I actually haven't actually thought about this at all. I don't know. It just feels mean to go online like this book is not worth buying. Yeet.
But that's not
Perhaps
that's not
not.
what we're saying. Like for instance, Story Genius, we all agreed it was for someone, just not for us. You know?
Yeah, that's
I don't
fair.
know.
That's fair. Um, but yeah, I don't think I'll do like a public on haul, but I'll definitely do a tier ranking at some point in terms of my taste, which is, all I really can talk on because I have no authority over anyone else's taste. Um, yeah, Phoebe says, I've been so MIA. I'm so sorry. Last year my job was busy and I was always sick. Oh
Oh,
no, I hope you're happy. I hope you're happy now. I
yeah.
hope you're happy how you've hurt your cause forever. I hope you think you're clever. Um, you are welcome to the time slot. Of course, of course. Thank you. We didn't really ask. At some point, we're just like, should we just do it?
Yeah. I feel like also if you ever want to take it back, have
Oh
it.
yeah,
Please.
I bend the knee. Um, Christina says, I'm so glad you're feeling better. I've had years like that. So yeah, talking about feeling better, write your novel from the middle. It is written by James Scott Bell, a little bit about the author, written by James Scott Bell, who's written a bunch of thrillers, mostly, that I could see. And I think might be his most famous book, which is a craft book. And that always makes me not weary, but it's always like, oh, you're known for your craft books and not your craft. Is
I
it a mo?
don't I don't know because I generally do believe sometimes in the those who can't do teach sort of
But
a
should they
guy.
teach? That's my question, Malin.
I do
Should
think
they
they should
teach?
because people who can do cannot teach because it comes naturally to them. So they don't understand the struggle and how to get better at it. And that's sort of how I see it. Well, often if you're struggling, you understand why. Like the best math teachers I've had as someone who sucked at math was a teacher who was like, oh, I used to absolutely suck at math too. And that's why I understand how to explain it to people.
Oh God,
What are you doing?
no, sorry.
Steve, no, not my face.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. And I feel like a lot of, especially a lot of writing craft books, which is the only craft books I read,
Mm,
are like that, where they like have these series of craft books and they have like 3 published novels or something. But yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. That's a little bit about him. I did see some names in the like sort of blurby section that I recognized, like Cami Garcia. Definitely heard about her. Um, and they need Diet Coke, a laptop, and their dog-eared copies of James Scott Bell's book on writing craft when they write. So um, that's a glowing review.
That is a pretty good run. Yeah.
That is a pretty good one. I want to talk, as I said, a little bit about. Should we do overall thoughts first? If I ever learned to structure these sprints, it would be over for
I
everyone.
feel like it's probably harder to structure a really short book though, as well,
It
because
is. It is true. But first, my first like initial thought is that is a lot of examples. A lot of examples.
yeah.
I feel like 50% of the books are examples, and 90% of the examples are movies, which is
I,
always
and
makes me
90% of the movie examples are Lethal Weapon.
yes, and also Gone with the Wind. A lot of Gone
Yeah.
with the Wind, which is a book to be
No,
fair,
no,
but
the Gone with the Wind example was the book. He keeps referring the book and not the movie.
I mean yes, but that's like the only book. Well, he has some mentions of books, but I thought it was a lot of
But
examples. A lot of it was from the
the
same
funny
book.
thing, because I used to feel that way about all the other craft books we've read. There's so many of them that reference so much movies or TV shows, um, and I've been watching this Brandon Sanderson lessons, and he also refers to movies all the fucking time. And I think it's just because a lot of storytelling nowadays is based more on the three act structure of movies than before. I don't know.
But then you should be able to find three act structures of novels. I feel like
Yeah,
if you're
but
talking about the
you're
writing
more
craft, talk about
likely
writing and not script writing. I don't know.
you're more likely to find an example everyone's going to know with movies and are going to be like, oh yes, I have seen that, than with books, I think.
I mean, fair, I think, but also if you're reading a writing craft book, you're probably a writer or interested in learning about
Yeah.
writing. So you probably read books, and if not, you should probably start reading books. It just irks me when they have crap books on writing novels that are just movie examples, basically. And yes, he does a few book examples, but I just, much like Ariel, I want more and more updated. A lot of this is dated. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the most modern one is probably Hunger Games, and that's coming up on 20 years.
Yeah, and I was going to say I'm not even sure whether he talks about the movie or the books in there, but the books are
The movies. This
pretty
was
old
written
now.
in 2014, so I guess
Yeah.
it is 20 years old. Nope,
Yeah.
10 years old.
Wow.
But yeah, that also irks me. Hate when writing books do that. Use a ton of movies as examples of
They all
novels.
do, is what I'm saying. I hate that too, but also I'm like, I can't blame them anymore because they literally all do it. It's so
Yeah, that's one thing about Story Genius, though. She does use a lot of book examples,
yeah.
if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
What about
Yeah.
oh, there was one we read as well that I felt had more book examples. The character one?
Oh, Kim Wyland writing character arcs.
Yeah.
Yeah, she also used a lot of book references.
Yeah, I feel like she had more in the balance. It was more books, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, so that's like one of the things I noted, that it was a lot of examples and there were a lot of movies.
Yeah.
A lot of just like, I don't know how to say it politely, but straight guy movies. Uh, and like a lot of
I
old
mean,
movies.
I do like Lethal Weapon, and I have watched it several times.
I mean,
So at
yes,
least
but there's like his
you know,
references are like Lethal Weapon, Casablanca, Gone with the Wind, which are all like very
Gone with the
classics.
Wind I thought was very girly, but I've never watched it, so no
It's still
idea.
an old example.
Yes, they're all very. But Gone with the Wind again. He's talking about the book, I think, for that one.
Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
so I think he's trying to get more like a classic type of book in there. I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway, that's my like big gripe with this book.
Yeah.
Um, and also he does a lot of repeating of himself. Like chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3 could have been an email. But I guess he had to fill these 50 pages with something.
I
So
feel like it almost feels like something that was probably a blog post, and that someone was like, "You could make a book out of that," and then he didn't put much effort into it. You know, like which
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
I don't mind, but I also feel like it didn't need to be a book. You know, I'm still like the lesson is still there, and it can still be good, but did
Yeah,
it need to be a book?
absolutely. Regina says my favorite writing advice was from a communication professor doing workshops at a fan con. Identify the problem, try to solve it, fail, try again harder, fail, try again at risk of life, succeed. That is very good advice. No longer fear plotting, but often write the last chapter early. Oh, Gone with the Wind is also an epic, which I can imagine can be hard to write.
Yeah.
I mean, yes.
My main gripe with it, if we're gonna do Grape's gripe section first,
Dun,
is
dun, 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 dun.
I
Just
don't
general thoughts.
yes, general thoughts. I still think it's going to be useful, and all of my notes are going to potentially help. And I want to try the method, so I'm not opposed to it, and I think it could be a good, interesting method. But my main issue with it is that it tries so fucking hard not to call things by Save the Cat's names, but it's
I
exactly the same
know.
beats, and it's like it's the same beat as this one. Why are you calling it something else?
It
And I
is
think
very
that bothers
much,
me. Yeah,
yeah. The first one I noticed when was they called like someone who pans and plot, called them a tweener, and I'm like, that's just a planter.
yeah.
Uh,
I think he's trying
it
to
is just
find a
like
new word for
a
it,
lot
an
of
in
effort
between all
into
that.
in reinventing something that already
Yeah,
exists, basically.
yeah. A lot of it felt
Which
a bit
is
like
which is fair. And I think a lot of the structure stuff. I mean, I loved his take on structure. That um, what was my note on that? Structure is a transcript. Was that what he said? Structure is a translation software for your imagination. I did love that one, and I thought that made a lot of sense, and that kind of just resonated with me. Um, but overall, I feel like he could have just called things what they were called,
or
basically.
I don't mind it if you're at the very least gonna acknowledge it. Like I feel like Story Genius did a little bit of that, where it was like, oh, I can't remember which book, but there was one of the craft books we read that would say like, or as it is called in Save the Cat, or like calling other things. I mean, giving the other names so that you know that they know, and it doesn't feel as awkward.
Yeah,
I don't know.
definitely, definitely, definitely. But it does start by saying that this book is for pantser and plotters and anything in between, which I think is a fair assumption. It's
Yeah,
definitely a book that you can read in any like anywhere on the sliding
stage, yeah.
scale of outlining,
Agreed.
um, and definitely something you can do also at any stage of the process.
Yeah.
So I'm going to use this when I do my re-outline for draft 2 of the cowboy book, I think. But that's one of the things. Like, it's just save the cat in a different frock. I don't know.
I wouldn't fully say that it's just Save the Cat in a different,
I mean, the
but
beat names that he gives and
yes,
all, like the
yes,
examples, and like he's talking about this suspension bridge, and I'm like, that's got to be the oldest like metaphor for a story ever.
yeah,
And you're just like, I came up with this.
yeah.
Um, so that's one of the things too. Um, I like the structure being translation software.
Mm.
Uh, Phoebe says, without pointing out the existing names, it feels like you're trying to nick stuff rather than acknowledge that you're building on.
Yeah, agreed.
For
Which I
sure, for
like.
sure.
You know, when we read all the on writing and world building,
Okay.
I do like that he refers to a lot of other writers' methods, but actually say it and just goes like, as you know, like at some point he talks about pantsing and he's like, the term was coined because of the expression flying by the seat of your pants by this person. And like he talks about the gardener versus architect's metaphor by other authors and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you're acknowledging that other people have coined these already.
Yeah. So chapter 1 is just basically him saying this can be used by anyone at any
Mm,
stage. And then he ends the chapter by saying that the dead center of your story is where you discover what your story is really about.
mm.
And then he goes on to say in chapter 2 that that the middle is what your story is really all about. And then he goes in chapter 3 and say like the middle is really what your story is all about. I'm like, I get it, right? You know, from the middle, but you're just repeating yourself in
I
3 chapters here.
I have my notes for like chapter one are like one line. It's literally like intro and how he can help any type of writer.
Yeah,
That's
that
it.
is also mine. Um, so yeah, that's like the one thing
Mm.
that he does, kind of just, I don't know, not a filler content or a filler episode, but it's just, I don't know. I
Bit of
guess you had to fill
repetition.
these. Yeah, I guess you had to fill these pages with something. And then he goes on to say something that I did kind of think about for a moment, and that was that the midpoint isn't a scene, but a moment within a scene. And I thought that was a good way of like phrasing it. Um,
I think that's useful as well to frame it that way because you might not like a lot of the time when you're especially at the beginning of using like a structure, if you've not used a structure like Save the Cat before, it can be a bit confusing what a beat is meant to be. If it's one scene, multiple scenes, a moment within a scene, and I feel like you can get lost in the details of that and you're like, wait, but is that my midpoint? But my midpoint is like 3 chapters. That doesn't make sense. Or, you know?
yeah, so I think that definitely is like you call I call a chapter a midpoint, but it's really truly like a singular moment within that midpoint that I consider like the true midpoint.
Yeah.
When the like switch really happens. But I did like the phrasing of that. And he also
Mm.
says that any great story or character has to face death somehow, and I also do agree with that. And then
Yes.
he goes on to talk about 3 types of death, which is the physical death, the professional death, and the psychological death. Um,
Which, to be fair, I don't think I've seen that in other craft books or
no,
how you
this
sort
one
of.
I did. This one I did like kind of like, and
Yeah.
there was a quote. I wrote it down. I have a bunch of notes here. Like, he says in this chapter, chapter 3, a great novel is a record of how a character fights with death. And I thought that that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And that also kind of made sense for me. And like,
Yeah.
death
I
doesn't always
agreed.
have to be physical, it can be professional, or it can be like the death of self. And he goes on to describe these different kind of deaths and what
Yeah.
they
And
mean for a story.
the sort of explanations around those was useful as well because I think he talks about for instance, how psychological death is the one that happens in romances, which you might not get. And you might be like, but what about a romance? You're not going to fight with death. But yeah, I guess the death would be the failure to get together. in that
Yeah,
case.
dying
So,
on the inside, as he describes that.
yeah,
So that definitely like one of his big selling points or big points is that like know the depth of your novel, like what
yeah,
type of death it is and what it means for character, and that's useful. And that's not
yeah,
something I've read in like every other book, even though you kind of know that it has to be stakes in a novel, but I never thought about it in like this categorically or whatever you want to call it.
yeah, yeah. You sort of know that the stakes are meant to like rise up or whatever, but
Hmm.
thinking about it in those terms, I think can be really helpful. If I don't know, I know you said you were going to maybe use more his method to try re-outline, but I think I'm going to try for my next project because I haven't outlined a new project yet. So that could be
Ooh.
useful to see like also the difference between using it after the fact as like a pantser almost, I guess in your case, and then more like using it like a plotter in my case for experiment's sake.
Well, the thing is that I think I am a plotter, but I just pens this because I was like, fuck it, let's do it live.
Yeah, no, and I'm definitely a planter, like from the
Yeah,
start, but
I'm a tweener for sure, for sure, for
a
sure.
tweener. I
A
hate that
tweener.
word. I actually
Yeah,
do
it
not
sounds
like
like
it.
tween, which is like I don't know, it gives me the ick.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that definitely is something that he talks a lot about, the character death, and like you
yeah,
should know your character death. And then he goes on to talk about the thing that I was like, what does this actually mean? Which was the two pillars of a
yeah,
novel. So he talks about structure as a bridge, which who hasn't heard that before, but it's a suspension bridge and there's two pillars holding the bridge up. And then he just says that the first bridge is doorway number one, and the second bridge is doorway. No, first pillar is doorway number one, and the second pillar
it's
is doorway number two.
the first one he calls doorway of no return, number one,
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, so it's just a point of no return.
yeah. And then he calls the second one doorway of no return, number two.
Yeah,
So, but he talks about how the first pillar, or what would be the break into two, I guess, like the change between Act One and Act Two.
yeah,
He talks about it and says that it's the doorway of no return, and your character is like in this doorway and it's slammed shut, and that's like your job as an author is to close that door so they can't go back to their like Act One life.
yeah.
Um,
He's got some good metaphors, to be fair, like sort of helpful to figure out
yeah,
some of
and
these
then he
bits.
has a bunch of questions you should ask yourself when you reach this doorway in your novel. Um, and they include: have you given us a character worth following? Have you created disturbance in the opening pages? Do you know the death stakes of your story? Blah blah blah. So I think that's kind of useful questions to answer yourself if you're in a draft or in a project.
Yeah, I've
Like
made notes. I've made notes of them as
after,
like a
yeah,
checklist for each section.
after Act One, like I think, can I answer these questions and what are the answers? I think that's a fun exercise to do, and
Yeah.
definitely one that I like actively thought about as I was like, because I was in the midst of my second act as I was writing this,
Mm.
and definitely questions that when I go back and revise, I will look at like these questions and be like, okay, these are the answers to that question. This is the answer to that question, and sort of get a streamlined, emotional kind of sense of the novel, I guess.
Did
Um,
you feel like it helped when you did it?
I did. I did. It definitely made me aware of my Act One's shortcomings, which there was a
Okay.
few of. Uh, and I think that was really helpful in hindsight. But I don't think I could sit down with like just an idea in my head and not a physical draft, or like not an actual story, and answer these questions and then outline. I think this is something I
Yeah.
need to do like after I actually have written a story.
I feel like some of those I could probably answer before, and some I would need to wait until I've like, have you given us a character worth following? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't
Have I
know.
given you a character even? Who's to say?
Is there even a character?
Yeah.
But
But
something
yeah.
like, do you know the death stakes of the story? I would want to try and figure out before, and that would be part of me figuring out my plot anyway. So I think I would know this before I write. So yeah, it sort of depends in the
I think
checklist.
I'm so bad at answering stuff like that in a planning stage when I don't have. I think I'm just. I think I just need to have something to work with to be able to work, which is why I think I'm more of a planter than an outliner.
Yeah.
And I think I'm leaning more towards the pantser side of the spectre than I do the planner
Yeah.
side of
Plotter.
the spectre, plotter, sorry, side of the spectre. So I'm definitely like a headlights kind of situation, I think.
Yeah.
And then he talks about pillar number 2, which is just doorway of no return 2. So, Act 2 is where all this stuff happens, and then you arrive at this doorway, and then you got to slam that door shut too. And I'm just like, this is just you telling us that, your act transitions should make sense.
He does
Uh,
say passing through this point is what makes the final battle and resolution possible slash inevitable, which I haven't thought about that scene in that sense, I guess. So it was probably useful for me to think about it in that sense for when I'm outlining,
oh,
maybe.
yeah,
Um,
that
but
does.
yeah, otherwise it's
And
just the point of no return is the same as like in other beat sheets.
yeah, he does also have questions to ask yourself at this doorway. Like, have you created a major crisis or a setback? And like, is there a clue or discovery that makes the final resolution possible? So I think all of these questions are fair questions to ask in like any stage of the drafting, wherever you fall on the spectre. And there
Yeah,
is one quote that I highlighted in my notes, which is that the second act is a series of actions where the character confronts and resists death and is opposed by counter forces. And I thought that was kind of a good way of just phrasing it. If you need like a
yeah,
one-line summary of like what the fuck is Act Two even about,
yeah.
I thought
But
that was really solid.
I agree, and but again in my head I was like, okay, so it's the bad guys close in. Like I couldn't help it.
Are we damaged by all this craft knowledge, Malin? Who's to say?
Maybe, maybe.
Who's to
I think
say?
it's just again, it's just because it helps to refer back for me to something that I've maybe integrated more in my brain, rather than learn new terms sometimes, because then it's just going to make things more confusing. So yeah, there's like moments where I'm like, okay, I need to decide what I'm calling this in my own head in order to be able to use it in the future. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to refer back to my notes all the freaking time when I'm writing.
For sure, for sure. And I think at least in me, Save the Cat is so ingrained. So that's like that's kind of the numbers I see on the wall when I'm thinking about plot and structure and everything. I just like, okay, bad guys close in. Okay, all this lost.
Yeah.
Okay, break into 3. Um, so
Like
yeah.
there are some that I think I've integrated maybe other ways of calling them. Like for instance, the shard of glass. I'm also calling the ghosts in my head, like sort of
Oh,
because I think that was from the character one that we read.
yeah,
Um, and so I don't mind it if like it naturally I'm like, oh yeah, it's that because then it helps me really pinpoint what it is that I'm trying to get there, like what I'm looking for.
yeah,
But
for
otherwise I'm
sure.
like, this is you're just calling it the same thing, something else. I get it.
Yeah. Hello, DW. Hello from the airport. I made it with time to spare and listen to you all. Thank you so much for being here. Where you going? Holiday? Call in. Dox yourself. Who's to say? Um, Regina says, LOL, the middle is what your story is all about. If I don't get past the first chapter, who cares what the middle is? Sarcasm, but also a little bit of truth there, Regina.
Yeah.
I mean, your middle of the book can be absolutely slamming, but if you have a like saggy beginning of your novel, nobody's gonna continue the middle and meet this amazing mirror moment.
I also find it really, really hard to write things in the wrong order. So like I
Oh,
don't know how
can't be
much.
me.
Yeah.
Have to write chronologically or else I'll die.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. When it says imposter syndrome, lol, I don't know. Maybe it's all trash. Maybe I'm trash. Maybe I am the trash. Um, I mean, yeah, but who's to say? Wendy, who's to say? Phoebe says, I'm on a different part of the plot pen spectrum for every novel I write. Ooh.
Same.
And I
But I
think,
think I am on a different part, but I think I'm inching more towards the plotting part every single time rather than randomizing it. Like I'm more just, oh, I'm going more and more into the plotting direction.
I mean, it does save a ton of work up front, I will say.
Yes. And I think at some point you discover how much you like or dislike revisions depending on what type of writer you are. And I've definitely discovered I'd rather have like a better first draft than more revisions.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Um,
But you like revising, so I feel like it's just different.
I do like revise. I've only ever revised short stories, but I did enjoy it, and I like the kind of the puzzle pieces of picking everything apart and then putting it back together into something
Yeah.
else. I think
You've
that's.
been more of a headlights writer recently, haven't you? So maybe
I mean, definitely. I started this literally with a hope and a dream. This draft. It's been like a year and a half at this point. So who's to say that if I was successful? But I don't know. That's just. I've tried outlining like my first ever novel, the sci-fi project. I outlined to the nines, and then I was done with the outline. I'm like, okay, I already know this story. I'm just bored now. I don't want to write this. Um, so I went into the second one, kind of halfway outlining everything,
mm,
and I'm just like, ugh, I don't know what I'm doing because I don't have any story to like. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I've been.
yeah,
So for the third draft, for the third story, I just like, okay, I'm just gonna pants this, see where the road takes me, and then I kind of just put up some 10 posts along the way. And
yeah,
I always knew how my novel would end, except now that has changed too because of this book. Because some advice here. So,
oh, interesting. So this has
miracles.
triggered some stuff.
It
Interesting.
has. I'm not saying it's a bad book. I'm just saying that don't get the physical copy.
Yeah, no, I agree. You should definitely watch at some point the Brendan Sanderson lectures because he does
It is
talk.
my docket, as a lot of other things are.
Yeah.
As a lot of things are.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, that could be another craft talk, except instead of craft book, it's
Review Sanderson's online
online
course.
lectures.
I don't think I'm there yet. DW says, sadly, a non-glamorous work trip to St. Louis. Meet me in St. Louis. Clang, clang, clang goes the trolley, or whatever that song is. Hello, Becca. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm late. Becca is never late or early. She arrives exactly when she means to. Wendy says, I don't like big revisions, but when I'm outlining, it doesn't matter how detailed I get. I just can't seem to see the characters and their story is enough detail from that level. That's what I am. Definitely what I am. Like, I get so like lost in an outline because I don't really have anything to work with.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something
I
I
I think
discovered.
the reason why it's worked for me when I have been more outlining, it's only if I've really thought and taken some time about the characters before I start actually drafting anything. If I don't have an idea of who the characters are, I can't outline because I don't know anything. Like I just feel like that's almost the first.
I usually start at the other end. I always have like this plot and this world in mind, but I have no clue who the
Mhm.
characters are, and the character kind of made when I write.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. We were joined by B. Brooke. Hello, hello. First time joining here and excited. Welcome, welcome. Stream every Tuesday, and some Tuesdays, like today, we talk about writing books, and today we're talking about write your novel from the middle, as you can probably gauge from the title. But yeah, I try to do a craft book a month, and usually Malin here will accompany me, or some other people with opinions. I love opinionated friends. So yeah, welcome, welcome. There's some love for Becca and some love for Regina and B. Brooks. But yeah, I definitely feel this, Wendy. I definitely feel this. Phoebe loves writing out of order. That's very unhinged of you. I don't know.
So
Wallace also does
unhinged.
this, and she says it's amazing. And Katie does it, and she says it's amazing. But
I
I
could
cannot
never.
bring myself to do it. I don't know if I'm just too set in my stubborn ways, but
I
um,
think it's I guess the Capricorn in you and the Virgo in me. I just things have to follow a certain order, including like big series when people are like, "You could start it from any book." I'm like,
oh,
"Fuck
not
no, I would never."
yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Phoebe says, I integrate whatever phrase resonates with me the most. And that's kind of what I love about reading all these craft books the last year and a half, is that you can just kind of cherry pick whatever works for you in your process,
Yeah,
then leave the rest in the dust, I guess. Sometimes different names resonates more with different people.
yeah,
Yeah, at this point, I just feel like um, Save the Cat is such an like I don't know industry standard, but I guess it's just in my brain because I'm so used to it. Unless like it was the very first craft book I read where I kind of just actually learned craft.
yeah,
So yeah. But anyway, that is the first half of this sprint. We talked a little bit about the structures and like a little bit about the deaths and the types of deaths and like the two pillars. So now we have a foundation to talk about the actual meat of the book, which is how to write your novel from the middle. in which we're going to talk a little bit about his process, I guess. And then you're going to get mine and Malin's opinion, and it's going to be amazing. And Phoebe is right. It is amazing, and you should definitely listen to your friends. Pick out the bits you like and put them in your toolbox.
I like
Definitely.
that. That's a good image.
Definitely. But yeah, we're going to do a focused stream, focused sprint. Oh, there's so many new buttons. Extra camera. Oh, okay. Video file, image file. Oh, much too much. We're going to do our favorite hangout, Cafe Genesee. I don't know why this is set to 19 minutes and 38 seconds. Oh, it's because it's not in focus
There's
mode.
the time. It's what time it is.
It is the clock. Hi guys, welcome in chat. We try our best, Bebrook. We try our best.
So I
Are
watched.
you also a writer? What are you writing? What is your
Yes,
genre? What's your
Brooke is
poison? Call
also
in.
Brooke is also a writer. I was watching. Basically, she was on DW stream earlier, which was 3 p.m. my time,
Oh,
so probably 4 p.m. your time, I think, which
I
was
was
perfectly
having
timed.
visitors. We were watching Downton Abbey and eating sushi. But I did see that
That
DW had a
sounds
stream,
great.
so I was gonna replay that at some point when I needed some work time. Um, and Elena is here. Hello, hello. I put you on while I make some bone broth. Yum. Regina
Nice.
says, I have to dip out and prepare for an 11 o'clock appointment. Thanks for the fascinating conversations. Anytime, Regina. You know where to
Bye.
find us. Yeah, 25 minutes on the clock. Are you working on anything particular today, Malin?
I think I'm just gonna have a little look at my last round of beta readers feedback and make some notes and just put things together on Notion so that I feel a bit more organized about it.
I've
So
been starting to make it like a world building Bible on Notion, and it's just so satisfying.
I love that. I love that.
Peter says, Hi, Malin. I'm a writer. I'm writing an echo fantasy. At the moment, I'm making some Spanish rice since it's lunchtime
Mm,
here. Oh,
everyone's
is
eating.
here the United States of the Americas? Probably. Uh, Probably. But yeah, 25 minutes on the clock, starting now, and then we'll be back to talk some more about craft. And also, my computer is kind of on his last leg, so if I freeze at any moment, I'll be back soon.
Do, 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 do.
Very soothing as always. Miss Malin, what did you complete for that sprint?
I explained my two main issues with the beta reading feedback that I've got to Anna and Hudson in our Discord, and chatted for a little bit with Anna about one of the main ones, and then we didn't quite get yet to the second one because I probably need to show her what I'm talking about specifically, but then I'll get to that and hopefully figure out a way to fix. I'm just scared of over fixing things, like you get to a point where you're like, I'm really happy with the state of things. I'm too worried about ruining it by changing something that might actually be working, but just for one person it doesn't. So yeah, it's
For
that
sure, for
fine
sure, for sure.
balance at this point. How about you?
I just worked on my little Notion page for my world building section of my cowboy book. That's what I did.
Nice. Love that. Love that journey for you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. B. Brooks says, yes, stateside, and thank you, Phoebe. I think it's cool too. Speaking of cool, we're going to talk about the actual selling point of the book, which is to write your novel from the middle in
Yes.
what Mr. Bell refers to as the golden triangle.
Yeah.
And I think I can get an image file displayed on screen now. Is that how this works?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
there you
guess.
go.
Oh, yeah, that works.
That
Nice.
does work. So this is the golden triangle. And if you're looking at it and thinking like, what the fuck is this? Then me and Malin will explain it all for you.
Ah, shit.
So I hope you did study, Malin. I hope
I've
you
got
did
my
study.
notes. I have my notes.
And if you didn't, then I did. But yeah, this is what James Scott Bell refers to as the golden triangle, and then writing your book from the middle. And he specifically talks about, we're going to cover some of the text, so I'm so sorry. I don't know if I can actually get can I get it smaller? Can I shrink this? Oh, I can. Let me just do some live on main finagling.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's enough. No,
Careful,
yeah,
your computer's gonna crash if you.
I know. But yeah, he refers to this as the golden triangle. The first point is the apex of the triangle, which he refers to as the mirror moment. And he says that the midpoint moment that we talked about earlier, the moment in your midpoint, that is the actual midpoint, like where your character basically is like, who am I going to be as a person? Am I going to be this person or this person? Like, what does it all mean? What's it all for? What does it mean?
Yeah.
What does it mean? That's the mirror moment. So your character takes a look at themselves at the midpoint, and they go like, either if you have like how did I phrase it? If it's a
He
character-driven story, it's like, who am
he's
I
got
as a
like
person?
two ways. Like he's saying, like if
And
you've
then if
got,
it's a plot-heavy story, then it's like,
yeah,
oh,
he
we are not
considers
going to
the
make it out
fourth
of
one.
life. We are going to meet our death now,
Yeah.
whatever way, shape, or form that comes as. And that's the mirror moment. So, and if you know your mirror moment, aka your midpoint, you can basically figure out the entirety of the rest of your book, and you can write your book from the middle.
Which
Um,
like this is the part where when I said I want to try this method, it's because I have known from the very beginning the only scene in my head that I've had for a while of Project Snowstorm is what I think is going to become the midpoint anyway. So it sort of works for me to, because I am literally starting the story from the middle because in my head I already knew this is the one scene I have to the sound of Run Boy Run instrumental version only.
run, boy, run! It's just out of trouble. That's a good bop. That
Yeah.
I think I have it in my fantasy project too, the instrumental version.
Nice. Nice.
But yeah, if you know your little midpoint, once you know the mirror moment, you can truly write from the middle. And knowing the mirror moment, you can go back to the beginning of the novel, to what he calls the pre-story psychology, which is basically a fancy way of saying backstory. He uses so many terms, like the way he says lead instead of main character is driving me nuts. I don't know why. Just call it a
Yeah.
fucking main character or protagonist or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, it's the
Every
lead.
in my notes, instead of writing lead, I kept writing MC. It's
Me
like it's
too.
a
Me
fucking
too.
MC.
Same. 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 And
Only
he
my
says,
only notes for the pre-story psychology. I think that's pretty much what the chapter was about. Is just the questions, like the checklist questions to ask yourself about that, and that's
yeah.
it.
He says, once you know the mirror moment, you should look at your character in the moment and ask yourself key questions about your main character based on the mirror moment.
Mhm.
Like, how did they get here? What is their story? Like, blah 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 blah. And
Yeah.
these questions, like he listed questions for again a movie that he loves apparently. Uh,
I do love Lethal Weapon. I've got nothing against it, but I do also feel like it was heavy on just that one example. I'm like, he could have used it once and then moved on.
yeah, as I said, a lot of film questions, a lot of film examples in this.
Yeah.
But he says that you should ask your character key questions about like how they got there. Let's see. He listed up some question that he asked for the what's it called? Lethal Weapon movie. Was that it?
Yeah. I
Uh,
basically transformed them into vaguer, like
yeah.
just yeah,
Where did he
neutral.
grow up? What was his family life like? What is his personality like? What force shaped his personality? What was it like in school? Blah 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 blah. And these questions will define the pre-story psychology, also known as the intro to your book. Like your
Well, not even the intro, but like what you know about your character before the start of
I
your
mean,
book.
yeah, but like the
Yeah.
backstory and the intro and like what brought them
Mhm.
to the beginning of your novel, basically.
Yeah.
This pre-story psychology. And he has a bunch of questions, and then basically like come up with similar questions for your own story. And then you can go on to the other side of the triangle, which is Transformation Central. I don't know if you watch Princess and Frog, but no, Transformation Station is what he says um, in his
I've
little
only
villain
watched it
song.
once.
Uh, it's it's the villain song where it goes Transformation Central. Um, and if you know the mirror moment, you know what your story is all about, and then you formulate the pre-story psychology, and then you get to the transformation. Like, what did the mirror moment actually do? What is the outcome of the mirror moment, and what sort of transformation has your character gone through? And it can be positive, it can be negative, it can be no transformation, it can just be static. Um, but there should be a transformation, or even just a acknowledgement of the stasis at least, and it
And
should be
he
visual.
says that, yeah, that has got to be very visual, which I think that's where I struggled with the fact that his example was a movie example because it is going to be visual anyway in a movie. And I kind of
Yeah.
feel like it would have been useful to have more examples of books in this specific, like for that specifically, because if you're going to say this has to be visual, but in a written format, then I need to know what that looks like as examples.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's one of my main complaints is like all the movies
Yeah.
and not enough novel.
Although
But yeah,
it's a good example, but I wish there were more that were not
I mean,
visual.
it's an excellent example. I think it's such like a good metaphor for the movie.
Yeah.
But it's a movie and not not a novel. And this is just a book about writing your novel from the middle.
Yes.
And he says that this transformation has to be visual, so it has to be some physical act that the character does to show the viewer, or I guess the reader in our case, the transformation and how it has affected the character, and it should involve some kind of inner realization and change in the character.
He does give
Um,
like a little recipe method to how to find your
how to
visual
create a
moment.
transformative visual. He had two questions to like fill out. One is to write a paragraph of inner realization in free form, diary-like entry. The main purpose of this is to dig as deeply into the thoughts of the character, reflecting on the transformation. And it doesn't have to be put into your novel, but obviously you want to have emotion in your novel, so it's good to put some thoughts into it.
I love a
Um,
good diary moment outside of the actual, like just thinking about what would my
oh,
main character
Grape had
write.
the Grape had the best idea for my novel in terms of like little. I'm gonna tell you after, but it was
Okay.
such a good idea in terms of diary stuff. And then question number two is to brainstorm the action that proves the transformation. So something that basically your character wouldn't do before the transformation, but they're doing now. He was giving Scrooge McDuck, nope, not Scrooge McDuck, Scrooge, Ebenezer Scrooge, as an
Same character,
example,
really.
same character. He was giving Ebenezer Scrooge as an example of like blah
Throwing a
blah
feast.
blah. All this
Yeah.
transformation happens, and then he goes on to give money, blah blah blah, that he wouldn't do before. So it should
Yeah.
be something like that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the golden triangle. And if you know one side, you can basically figure out the two other sides, and you can reverse engineer it or forward engineer it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, the golden triangle. This is what it looks like. This is what the book is about. This is what it takes 50 odd pages to tell you about. Could have been a blog post.
But
Yeah.
on the other hand, I do feel like examples are the crux of, these craft books, because you like if you just show me this fucking triangle, I understand all of the words, but having them in practice is how you start thinking about it in terms of your own story, because you're like, oh, so this is how they
Okay.
did it. Okay, how would I do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. And that's basically the book, I think,
Yeah.
A little
I
bit
mean,
about structure, and then the golden triangle, which is like the thesis statement.
well, then he's got the chapter that I call Save the Cat.
Yeah, he goes on to tell you how he does it, and he just basically has Save the Cat, writes a novel beat sheet, but calls it ridiculous things.
Yeah.
One of them, like the one that just kind of made me giggle was, did he call it pet a dog or something?
Yes, instead of
So
Save the
basically, it's just
Cat.
so instead of saving the cat, you're petting the dog.
Except that Save the
Like,
Cat is meant to be a moment in the first, like,
yeah,
at the beginning, and the pet the dog moment is meant to happen, like, during the troubles of Act Two, which I thought was weird, because I was like, I don't think I've ever really seen or read books where the moment where you start being like, oh, they're a nice person because they just helped someone out that's weaker than them. That usually doesn't happen in Act Two. That happens in Act One. I
yeah.
don't.
It was, I don't know. It was very. I was riddled with curiosity.
Yeah.
I was trying to find that beat sheet he had.
Oh, the lights out made me laugh as well. It was like, so Dark Night of the Soul.
Yeah. He calls them opening disturbance, care package, argument opposed to transformation, trouble brewing, doorway of no return number one. As we all know, the first pillar.
Yeah.
Kick in the shins, the mirror moment, pet the dog, doorway of no return two. Mounting forces, which is just
Bad
gathering your
guys
team.
close in. I
Lights
thought
out.
no. I thought the mounting forces, the bad guys close in, as in it's the opposite forces that are
Oh
mounting.
yeah, the opposition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad guys close in. Lights out. Q factor. Final
That's the
battle.
team. Yeah.
Transformation. And it's just like, yeah, I
It
see what
felt
you
a
did there.
bit forced because he even gives an explanation for some of those names. Like he goes like Q Factor because of Q who helps James Bond, and I was like, this feels like you thought about it after the fact to try and find something else to call it because you didn't want to use
Yeah.
Save the Cat.
And then he has a bunch of like tips for outliners and planners and pantsers and tweeners and everything in between. And then he has an entire chapter dedicated to basically troubleshooting, I guess.
Yeah,
Little tips and tricks that weren't really in
I liked
theme.
the main notes that I took from that chapter 9 was the how to write an elevator pitch. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll try that. That's fun.
Oh, I didn't get that far, I think.
Oh, did you
But
not?
yeah, he talks about showing, not telling, themes, characters, blah blah blah, all the shebang. And then the opening line is also one of them. So that's like the last chapter is just a troubleshooting chapter for your book.
Yeah.
Uh, and then he has a bunch of recommendations and also some lists of all the thrillers and the different universes he's written in. And that's the book, How to Write Your Novel from the Middle. Love a graphic, says Wendy. I feel like there should be example for multiple very different genres and books. It's like you just Google synonyms for the normal terms. Aha, yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, James Scott Bell is more successful than I'll ever be, so who am I to question his methods? But it did seem a bit lazy, I will say.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, I'm gonna be at 1 second, but I could hear the tippy steps of Edgar downstairs, and I'm just gonna ask Jamie to go check because he's been really bad recently and keeps trying to climb on the counters to like get the food we've left on the kitchen counters.
oh no, my boy
And like it's really recent, like he started doing it. I'm just gonna shout quickly.
is fine. Yes, says Wendy, there should be book examples. At least, like there were like 2 book examples, and then a trillion movies, and the movies were like Lethal Weapon, some Moonstruck, was that a movie? And he also did
Oh, yeah.
Casablanca was one movie, and I'm like,
Although I have no
this.
idea, like some of the movies he mentions, I'm like, is this the movie he's talking about, or is there like a book it's based off that I have no idea about, and he's talking about the
Oh,
book?
I just assumed like everything that he didn't
Yeah,
specifically state was a book. I just assumed was a movie, which
was a
was
movie. Yeah,
most of the examples. But yeah, that's it. Um, do you have any closing statements? We're going to go into the little questionnaires questions after. But any
Um,
like things that haven't been mentioned that you want to say, or any thoughts you want to
no,
share? Any
I think
nuggets of wisdom?
I took good notes of everything, thinking this could be useful in a lot of things, except there's like the very, very last point of the entire book, which is Secrets of a Page Turner. I was like, what the fuck is this? Because he talks at length about an example of a completely unknown book as like the main example of how to make a page turner. And it sounds terrible. Like it sounds like a pulp, detective type of novel. And I was like, okay, I don't think this is for me. And so that was the main one that I ignored.
Yeah. Um, Malin, as always, who is this book for?
Well, it is for pantser, plotters, and everyone in between.
Okay, love that. Where in the process do you see people use this be most useful?
I can see how that could be useful for like different stages of the process, but for me personally, I'm going to try and use it to help with an outline from the start because I've struggled before with making good characters that have like interesting arcs, and I feel like this book is perfect to try and get over that hurdle. So,
A little mirror moment, golden triangle situation.
yeah.
Who do I think this book is for? I think this book is for people who can borrow it from the library or maybe get the ebook.
Yeah.
I think it's for
Ebook,
people, yeah, I should say any people. It's for people who write books.
I think the ebook was pretty cheap in the UK at least. I'm
I don't
assuming.
remember how much
Mm.
this was. I hope it wasn't a lot, but
Yeah, the
yeah.
the paperback was like too expensive, and I was like, it's 78 pages. I'm not buying this.
So yeah, do you see yourself using this in your own process, Ms. Malin?
Yes, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try the method. I think a lot of it is things I'm probably already doing based on the fact that I basically saved the cat, but some of it is new information, and I would like to do mostly the triangle sort of moment and just see if whether that helps me. So yeah.
And I think that's the major take back from this book is the golden triangle, which you can Google for free.
That, and I did like the whole you're fighting three kinds of death,
Yes.
theory.
But
Yeah.
now we've told everyone about it, so they don't have to read the book.
Yeah.
Who do I see myself using this in my writing? As I said, I think when I go back and I'm going to re-outline my novel, and then I'm going to make an outline, uh, like a new outline for draft two. Um, I'm not going to re-outline. I'm going to reverse outline my novel, and then
Mm.
I'm the first draft, and then make a second outline based on that. And I think I will use this sort of like an anchor for the outline, so that I know transformation and the mirror moment and like the pre-story psychology. I already know all these things, but I have a hard time putting little threads between them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, so obviously my characters already has a bunch of backstories. I know that the mirror moment is like an emotion he has at a certain point in the novel, and I thought I knew the transformation, but the transformation has changed from my original thought, which thanks to this book. So
That's
that's one
very good.
interesting aspect. But yeah,
As in, like,
uh,
the transformation itself or the visual showcase of that
the
transformation?
visual showcase, and actually the transformation itself, because I can say the original thing. My original plan was to have him embark on a train journey to New York and to like an unknown future, um,
Okay.
which didn't really fit the mirror moment or his pre-story psychology, but it was just a visual I had in my head when I started the novel. So I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things that just want to help me with. If you were to roll the die, Ms. Malin, what is your rating out of 6?
I out of 6 always perturbs me. Like, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
it's what we do. It's a very Norwegian culture thing, I feel like.
Maybe like, can I do halves? Can I say
No,
3.5?
does the die have a half side?
Fine. Okay, then it's a 4 probably.
Oh,
Because
I
it
was
is
gonna
gonna
give
be
it
useful and it's
a
short.
3.
Yeah, see, I'm in between. I don't feel like it's quite a 4, but I don't feel like it's quite I feel like a 3 is hard, like, harsh, because that's, like, half, and I feel like it's a bit more than half for me.
Okay, I feel like this was exactly half a craft book for me, so that makes perfect sense.
Perfect.
So yeah, that's been our thoughts on Write Your Novel from the Middle.
Also, if you've never read another craft book, like say Save the Cat, or you've never used another bead sheet, then I think this book can be really, really good because it's very short and it's very like easy to explain. Like it explains in an easy manner sort of those beats that you might not know about. So I do feel like in a way I'm more biased by the fact that I've read all these other craft books before.
Sorry.
But like, yeah, that's also why probably it's a little bit lower in my head than it would be if I hadn't.
But like, if someone who was new to craft or like just hadn't read any craft book came and asked, "Oh, Malin, I'm thinking about either buying Write Your Novel from the Middle or Save the Cat Writes a Novel. Which one do you recommend?"
Probably Save the Cat because it's got more examples, and I feel like you really need them at the very beginning.
Oh, Save the Cat is just the perfect craft book. I'm sorry.
But if someone's like, if I have a friend who's like, I'm thinking of becoming a writer, like, you know, like sort of dipping their toes in it, then I'd be like, you're not going to want to read this really long one and you're going to drop it halfway through. Read this super short one instead.
Oh, I don't know if I'd do that. Anyway, that's been our thoughts on Write Your Novel from the Middle by James Scott Bell. My name is Stieg, and joined with me today has been the lovely Miss Malin, as always. Next month, I said this was going to be a bi-monthly thing, but I've already got a craft book lined up for next month with Grape.
It's not the story graph one, is it? Like, I know we talked about this one at some point.
Story graph. It's going to be this one, Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott.
Story grid, sorry. Oh, don't know
which
that
is
one.
such a different craft book, I think. It's not going to be the story grid because we're doing that for the month after.
Oh, okay. Am I reading this with you? I feel like I've got it.
You said yes.
Yes.
But
okay.
I don't know if you actually have any plans to join
No,
me
but
for
this
it.
is going to be a Kindle edition too, because the paperback's 25 quid and the Kindle edition is
dang.
7. So,
but yeah, there's going to be Bird by Bird next month. I'm going to read it with Grape. This is a very different craft book than the ones I usually read, because usually I will read craft books that are very like logical, more hands-on, I think, and I don't think this is hands-on. This is some instructions on writing in life by Anne Lamott. The cover is gorgeous, and Grape had the book, so we're going to read this. So stay tuned for the craft book in March.
What?
And then me and you. No, wait, were you busy in April or were you busy in May? There was some month you couldn't do.
Is there?
But anyway, we're going to do Storygraph after when Malin is available, whatever that is.
Sure.
Thank you so much for being here, Malin. As always, it's a pleasure. One of my favorite activities is talking craft with you and other people. So
I really enjoy it. And also, I feel like I generally learn a lot from these chats. So
there you go. There you go. I hope it is as entertaining to watch for you people. Phoebe says, thanks for sharing. Thanks for being here, Phoebe. Lovely to see you again. And also, hello, Brooke. Welcome to the club. It's a very exclusive club. And as always, my name is Stieg, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye.